to the Point. It is Monday, July 19th, 2021. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV channel 7, 11, and 20. Good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9, and all the folks joining us on Party Grenada and Go to Fet Facebook pages. It is a pleasure to have you. It is the very first To the Point of the week, and this morning we are talking sexually related offenses and crimes, and by extension the Sexual Offenders Registry. Joining me to discuss the issue is clinical psychologist, no stranger to the show, Dr. Augustine Panchoo. Good morning, Doc. How are you, sir? It's been some weeks since I've last spoken to you.
Good morning, Blossom. Good morning to all of our To the Point listeners for this bright and sunny Monday morning in the month of July. I am doing great, and I'm hoping that you are doing great also.
Yes, can't complain at all. So this morning, Doc, we are talking sexually related offenses and crimes, and by extension, the Sexual Offenders List, Sex Offenders List, or Registry, I should say. So let's first, before we get into the registry, let's look at the issue of sexually related crimes in Grenada. This continues to be a problem in Grenada every year, or every period for the assizes. Sexually related offenses continue to dominate the list of cases that have to go before our courts here in Grenada, and it continues to be a problem. From a professional point of view, your take on how our society has evolved into this place where sexual offenses are dominating our crime system?
Right. Well, a really, really great talking point. And so let me address it by talking about two different things. One, yes, there is no question that there is a upsurge in the reporting of sexually based crimes against our population. Okay, so when you look at the statistics, Blossom, there is about 67 sexually related offenses account for about between 60 and 67% of all cases that go before the High Court in Grenada. Now 60 to 67%, that's astronomical. Second point I want to talk about in relation to, I am not so sure that right now there is an increase in sexually perpetrated offenses. What I think is, based upon history, I believe we have always had sexually based offenses against our population, vulnerable people, women, children, the elderly, etc. But we have not. Right now, we have avenues for reporting. We have avenues and medium for, and people have been now empowered to talk about it and to make a call and to tell somebody else and to reach out. So I think that's probably the singular reason why we have an upsurge in the number of cases that go before the court system in Grenada. So these are the two things I want to remind us of. But yes, let's come back now to sexually based offenses. I want to say this morning that sexual offenses are considered to be a special kind of offending when it comes to psychological concepts. So in the field of psychology, there are certain mental health conditions and there are certain behavioral behaviors that we classify. Now you have depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, schizophrenia. You have a whole slew of anxiety and depressive conditions. We have eating disorders and we have sexual paraphilic disorders. And sexual offense is one of those specialized kind of offenses Because what we have found out and what the research suggests is that very often sexual offense is not about so much the gratification of your sexual urges and sexual needs. Sexually based offenses against our population is based upon the perpetrator's need to have control over his victim or her victim. And so the catalyst, what spurs a person to commit an offense, whether it's against a child and or an adult, it's very often rooted in his or her desire to assume control over the person with whom he or she is perpetrating the offense. And so that's why we classify sex offenses in a special category of mental health conditions or mental health deficits. And it brings us to the point that if we are going to classify sexually based offenses in a special category of mental deficits, then like substance use disorder, for example, which falls in a special category also, substance use disorder, we create programs to treat people who suffer from addiction. So it is with sexually based offenses. We create programs to treat people in a special way who are prone to or who have the tendency to commit sex offenses. And so we are going to talk a little about that this morning because what we have in Grenada is a situation where there is very little avenues for people with. So let's go back to our thesis statement. We started out by saying that sexually based offenses account for 67%, 60 to 60, that's 2/3. It therefore means that of every 10 cases that go before the court, between 6 or 7 of them have flavored with a sex crime. It therefore means that if we recognize that from the judicial system, think of it, and this is not just a new happening. In the last 10 years, the statistics continue to remain the same, okay? It therefore means that, watch this, Blossom, that 67% of all the inmates in Her Majesty's prison at Richmond Hill are there because all part of their sentencing had to do with a sexually based offense. And that brings us and begs us now to ask ourselves, what are we doing or what is being done to treat and or rehabilitate persons who are in prison or who have been allowed, who have served time and are now outside? Okay? And in Grenada, there is now we have the discussion. So this is trending, the discussion about the sex offenders registry. And I have said before, and I will say it again, the sex offender registry is a good tool. So I want to break it down for us today and then move on to what the really gist of what I want to share with us this morning. The sex offender registry is like what I want to be very local with my explanation so that people get it. So Blossom, let's pretend we want to do laundry. It's laundry day. That's a common thing in Grenada. So when it's laundry day, you get your detergent, you make sure you have your water, you have a container, whether it's a washing machine, a tub, or a bucket to put your clothing, or sometimes a river, that's your container. But in addition to the detergent and the bleach and whatever else you want to use and your scrubbing brush or your juking board or your beautiful hands, you also look for some clothespin. And the clothespin is part of the laundry day. And I see the registry as maybe the clothespin. It's significant because you want your clothes to dry, you want it to stay fresh. He wanted to capture the breeze, excuse me, etc. But there is a whole bunch of stuff that needs to happen. Watch this. This is the beautiful piece of it. So when you're looking at sex offenses and sexually based crimes, there is a whole bunch of other stuff, really, really fundamental and really important stuff that must be done before the laundry gets to be placed to be dried. And so, whereas the registry may be significant or is a significant, I am not trivializing it, a significant document and a significant step in dealing with sexually based offenses. It is not a singular, it is not like a pivotal, it's not a foundational piece of legislation in treating sex offenses. And so I'm going to use the opportunity this morning to move on to what I believe is some of the fundamental issues that Grenada, our judicial system, must deal with in order to effect a registry. Okay? So what are we looking at this morning? What kinds or what are some of the types of sexually based offenses? So we have rape. We have involuntary deviant sexual intercourse. And you may ask, somebody may ask, and I'm glad you're asking, what is that? That is, for example, if whether consent or force or coercive sex, if you were to, for example, tie up somebody or make them incapacitated against their will, whether it is drug or restraints or additional people holding and restraining. This is what we refer to as involuntary deviant sexual intercourse. Then you have sexual assault, you have indecent assault, you have indecent exposure and public lewdness. For example, you are having sex in your car on Grandans Beach. Child pornography, child sexual assault, incest, prostitution. And the last one I want to kind of talk about is sexting, texting, using sexually explicit language on the media, and especially if it is done with minors. And now, I know recently Grenada instituted the Electronic Crime Bill, and this bill seeks to address some of the contents or the intentions of sexting. So these are some of the offenses. And in Grenada, I am yet to see the judicial system address the plethora of sexually based offenses. Very often we go straight to the rape or the incest or the lewd act against children. Those seem to highlight, but there is a whole bunch of other sexually based crimes perpetrated against individuals in our society. I want to pause just in case you have a question or I want to ask me something specific.
Yes, I want to ask about, even with all these sexually related crimes and the problems that we have with the prevalence of these sexually related crimes in Grenada, one of the sore points for members of the public is the sentences or punishments handed down to these perpetrators. And it bothers me specifically because it feels like the trauma that I have suffered as a sexually related victim, it's not equating to the punishment you're giving the perpetrator. And right. I feel like that's one of the reasons why a lot of our victims either do not come forward or they do not pursue the cases, because it's like, is it worth it if you only get a year, 2 years, or a fine of $500?
Right. And I think I hear what you're saying, and I've heard it before in my line of work and responsibility. I've seen it, I've heard it. I believe that there is much more that we can add to the court system, the legal system, to make people a little more, or cause people to become more thoughtful of their actions, and or to give to our survivors and our victims a little more sense of satisfaction when it comes to punishment for sexually based crimes. I think sexually based crimes sometimes are treated really flippantly, in my estimation. I am not part of the judicial system, so I don't know what are the ins and workings out of what goes on there and how we enact new laws. But we know that the government, the Senate, is the forum for instituting new laws as brought about by the legal team for the government. So let me say this here. I agree with you. I believe that there should be a little more thought and more consciousness when it comes to the way we treat sexually based crimes. Sexually based crimes is a crime that display a lot of anger, a lot of aggression, even though it's passive anger, passive aggressive aggression. It is a lot of feelings of domination and power and control that goes on in the mind of the perpetrator as he perpetrates upon his victims. And so I believe the law needs to address it, and address it more to give people more satisfaction. I want to move on to my take on where the vision should be for sex offenses in Grenada. I do have a vision. And so here is where I want to take it. I want to take it in a realistic, progressive manner and ask some very pertinent question. Okay? So in Grenada, we do not have any laws, Blossom, that sets restrictions on perpetrators of sexually based crimes. We have very little restrictions. No, the registry seeks to have people register, have people report to the police station, have people account for a certain time of their life after they serve time in prison, or some for sexually based crime. Some people do not serve time in prison, depending on the nature of it, according to the laws of Grenada. But even though they do not serve time, they still have to register as a sex offender for a particular time. So Blossom, here are some of the very pertinent questions. I want our listeners to take note of them. When it comes to sexually based offenses, we do not have any restrictions on where the perpetrators live. Okay, we don't. The laws have not yet equipped our society with where sexual perpetrators live. In fact, the laws of Grenada, and this is what is a very bothersome concept when you really think about it. The laws allow perpetrators to live in the home of the survivors. This borders on a sense of carelessness on our judicial system. That's what I choose to call it, carelessness in the real world, where sexual perpetrators are treated, and or where the laws seek to protect society. Here are some of the things that happen. There are restrictions, Blossom, on how far they live from a school, from a park, from the beach. What restrictions are there for church? In fact, in churches, to go to church, there are restrictions. And in some societies in North America and Canada, you can't even go to church because church is a place where children are. Things like carnivals and recreation on the beach and in the blocko and in dances. Sexual perpetrators are allowed to freely drive and ride on the bus, the very bus. And I know what people may say. Well, Dr. P, what are you saying? If I commit a sex offense, I'm not allowed to ride on a public bus? No, really and truly, no, you should not. Because when we understand, Blossom, we do not understand the nature of sexually perpetrated offenses. A person who has a sexual paraphilic disorder could be sitting on the bus with you and choosing a seat where he knows another person is going to rub on him and be sexually fulfilled. Now, I know you're probably thinking, oh boy, no, it's scary to even ride the bus. Yes, it is scary to ride the bus in that context because they are sexual predators who prey on unsuspecting. So watch this, Blossom. That's why I want to make it really crystal clear for an understanding. A sexual perpetrator can come in Grenville and wait until school is over, and when a bunch of school children are on the bus, insert himself or herself among the school children. And in Grenada, that's free, and he is free to roam. And I say this is carelessness on the judicial system, on our lawmakers. He or she must not be allowed to roam Bathway on any given day when there are people. She must not be allowed to live among the children. In fact, he or she, for the duration of the probation, whether it is 10 years, 15 years, and there are some crimes that are committed against society in which the person may receive a lifetime sentence. Well, if they receive a lifetime sentence, they'll probably spend their life in prison. But once they get out, for outside of the duration of their parole or the probation, there must be certain restrictions placed upon the offender to debar him from mingling with the rest of the population. That's how significant a sexually based offense is. Now, the registry names them, and the person may report to the police station. In the interim, how are we monitoring a sex offender? In the United States, what happens, Blossom? We give them a GPS. So for the duration of the probation, if they serve 5 years for the sex offense, it's equivalent to 5 or 10 years of probation. For that 5 to 10 years of their probation, they wear a monitor. So somebody is alerted whenever they move away from the restriction. If they go to a party, they go to a fair, they go to the beach, the monitor goes off and tell the probation department or the police or whomever is given the responsibility of monitoring sex offenders that your person is out of range. And I say this morning, that unless these measures, fundamental, basic, and security measures are taking place or have given thought to or put in place, the registry is really a list of names of people. I don't walk around, you don't walk around, Blossom, with a picture of all the sex offenders in Grenada in your purse. So whenever you go to the store and the next person behind you pull it out and you scan through, and then you say, you see this third one there? Stay away from him because he's a sexual perpetrator. We don't do that. So in order to protect you, Blossom, and your beautiful daughter as you walk the lines in the grocery, is to restrict and say to a sex offender, you dare not, you must shop at a certain time, or send somebody to buy your grocery. Because just because you have perpetrated a sexual crime, you have now disearned yourself the opportunity to mingle with regular people. And I am not saying anything difficult. I'm not saying anything hard. I'm not proposing anything that is utopic or cannot be achieved. I say to give the sex offender registry teeth, to give it gumption, to give it power. Those fundamental and basic principles must first be in law. So when someone violates, right now there is no violation of any parole in Grenada for sex offenders. Remember, 67% of all those who go to Richmond Hill Prison are going there because they have perpetrated a sex crime against society. So if 100 of them were released in 2020, guess what, Blossom? There were 60 of them who perpetrated a sex crime against society. And I ask you this morning politely, and you don't have the answer, so I'm going to ask you anyway, where are they? Where are these people? Who are they accounting to? And even if you had a sex registry enacted right now, or last year, or 2 years ago, where are the laws to give the registry some power? To say to the world, you know what? If I see Tom, Dick, and Harry in a place they shouldn't be, they are in trouble. Guess what? The registry requires them to go to the police station maybe once a week. Most of them, or many of them, I don't know if it's most because I didn't do the research, many of them do not have their own transport. So they're going to be on the back of the bus coming to go to the police station, sitting close to somebody the age similar to the one that they're perpetrating on. I advocate, Blossom, and I say our society demands better. Our society demands more thought. Our society demands more protection. Every time, bar none, every time we have an offense, recently, look, we had an offense, an offender charged with 18 counts of sexually based crime against a child. Okay? He's on bail. Watch this, Blossom. That's his constitutional right. He's on bail. I ask you this morning, do you know where he is? Does the police know where he is? And I'm sure the answer is no. But he is charged with 18 counts. And I'm sure by the time the case goes before the judge, there are going to be more charges. So I say to my lawmakers this morning, I am going to use the possessive, our lawmakers, Blossom, and listeners. It is more than enough time for us to say to Grenada, to the women of Grenada, to the vulnerable of Grenada, whether it's men, to the developmentally delayed, to people in Mungay, to children. It is time for our society, bar none, to wake up to the effects of sexually based crimes against society and to say to ourselves, let us put all of our energies, well, not all necessarily, but enough energy into enacting enough rules to reduce the incidents. Because I do not want us to believe that I'm talking only about the punitive side, but I'm talking about the protective side of offending. We have to protect before we punish or hold people responsible for their behaviors. I want the judicial system, I want our lawmakers, our senators, our ministers to get up and wise up to the demands of our population. 67% of the crimes way too high to be glossing over. We have to devote more energy. And we need some bold people to enact laws and rules to protect our children and our women and other vulnerable people. In fact, when it comes, Blossom, and that's the sad thing, when it comes to sexually based perpetration of sexual crimes, everybody is vulnerable, not just a woman or not just a child, not just the elderly or the developmentally delayed, every one of us, because it's about power and control. It's not about sexual gratification. It is about the power and the control I can have over another person while I do whatever I want to do to the body and to the soul of another person.
Quickly before we go to the break, I've heard the argument before that even perpetrators of sexual crimes can be rehabilitated. So after serving your prison sentence or paying your fine, you don't have to be vilified. You don't have to be cast away. You don't have to be forever known as a perpetrator or forever treated as a repeat offender. Quickly, what are your thoughts?
Oh, very good question. Very, very good question. Let me say this here. With the right treatment, Blossom, sexual perpetrators can be rehabilitated. But I have news for you. And that's research. You could just go and Google it, and you'll find the information. The rate of recidivism, that is repeat offenders, when it comes to sexually based offenses, is a rather startling and a rather high one among sex offenders. And not just for sexual crimes, but for additional offenses against society that deals with having power and control. Armed robbery, for example, is not so much about coming to steal my TV, my jewelry, or my $500. When you go to somebody's house and you stick them up or you tie them up, you are exercising a form of control over their body. And so sometimes what we see with sexual perpetrators is that if they are not treated, if they do not receive treatment for their thought processes that are so disorganized and also so antisocial, they go right back into perpetrating. It may not be a crime of sex this time, but a crime where they have the opportunity to exert power and control. And so for all those who face sexual end up in prison and or they go before the court, because a lot of people go before the court and they are never punished really for the crime of sex. But for those, they can be rehabilitated through treatment.
Fair enough and understood. Let's take a quick break and then we're going to come back and continue the discussion with clinical psychologist Dr. Augustine Panchoo. To the point, we'll be right back.
Looking for that injection of vibes and energy, of course? Well, I've got just that. Hi, my name is Gary, Mr. Smooth, and I'm inviting you to join me on the Hot Morning Show on Hot 98.5, 98.7 FM. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 10 in the morning. I've got a healthy dose of your favorite and most infectious hits sampled with information, news, laughter, and all the other ingredients that go into making the hottest morning show on the radio. The Morning Heat. And while you're at it, don't forget to hit us up on WhatsApp, 435-7517. We've got topics, we've got discussions, calls, voice notes, and so much more. But I can't tell you everything. You gotta tune in. The Hot Morning Show on Hot FM 98.5, 98.7 with yours truly, Gary, Mr. Smooth. Kaboom!
Protect yourself and our community from COVID-19. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. If soap and water are not available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with at least 70% alcohol. Use a tissue when blowing your nose, sneezing, or coughing. Immediately discard the tissue properly and wash or sanitize your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Let's do our part to ensure that each and every Grenadian remains healthy. To stay up to date, visit the Government of Grenada's webpage or the Ministry of Health's Facebook page. For more information, contact the Ministry of Health's hotline by calling 53-VIRUS. This has been a public service announcement brought to you by the Ministry of Health.
GBN Television News at 7, a pulse on all things Grenadian. Look out for our new features through expanded synergies with our media partners in Barbados, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Trinidad, and beyond. Capturing the latest in news, sports, weather, and entertainment. Credible, informative. Thank you for making us number one.
Good morning and welcome back to The Point. We're speaking with clinical psychologist Dr. Augustine Panchoo. This morning we're talking sexually related offenses, especially in the wake of the sexual offenders registry that is currently in consultation. Speaking of the registry, Doc, what do you think it would mean for us in tackling this issue of sexually related crimes? As well as I'm going to add on a piece in the question here. Last week, the PRO of a political organization said that the establishment of the registry, there needs to be more to it to curb the issue of sexually related crimes in Grenada.
Okay. So it's still in draft. So I just want to lay this out there. The registry is in draft. There was a consultation earlier on in the month, in the first week in July, on it. So it is a work in progress. But I want to agree with the sentiments, or some of the sentiments of the person that you referenced, and that is, I have had an opportunity to glance at it. I haven't studied the document, but I have had an opportunity to look at it, and I agree there is a lot more that could go in there, because as I said in my earlier on, when you're dealing with sex offenses and you have a document like the registry that seeks to bring order and give guidelines and rules. So that's what the registry is going to do. The registry, in addition to having the names and the biographical data of an offender inside of it, in addition to having that inside, there is also a draft for certain laws and protocols and rules to be followed by the person on parole, the perpetrator. And I agree, because I believe much more needs to be placed there. Okay? For example, all of the places where the person can live. You know, Grenada is small. Okay, I worked in, watch this, Blossom. I've worked in jurisdictions in North America where sex offenders are housed in the desert, far away from other people. They're allowed to go to the store, Blossom. Watch this. If they're in a store and they're only allowed to go to a store a certain time of the day and for a certain period, and all of that information is tracked on the GPS, so there is no really accounting. Your probation officer does not call you and say, what did you do today? All he does is to log in and look at the activity of your GPS, and your GPS tells him, wherever you went for the day. Okay? This sex offender registry needs to address something like that. Places where they could live and where they can't live. Unless that is done, having a perpetrator live in the same house as children, sometimes not his or her biological children, and you're a sex offender, and requiring you to report to the police station is kind of useless. It's really kind of useless. Okay? What you're reporting to do, there is no monitoring of you and your activities. 1 o'clock last night, where were you? People on parole for sexual crimes, and most parolees in the United States and Canada, Blossom, at 7 o'clock in the night, they have to be indoors. They cannot get out before 5 in the morning. Well, they could, and so let me lay it for you so that you have an understanding of what I'm talking about. With special permission, let's say they have to go to work, they are working, and they need to leave home at 5. Then they make applications to the parole board or to probation so that they have a letter with them on their person granting them permission to leave home before they are able to. They can't drive close to a park. They can't live close to a school. They can't live close to where there are children. So these are the things that the registry lacks. Outside of that, it is going to be a list of names. And I argue, and I say that over and over to people who question my, whether or not I am on board with the registry. Yes, the registry is a good law to enact, but it is insufficient by far because it has no legal teeth. Asking someone to register, let's say you have to travel and you have to ask permission to travel. All these are good, but what does it say? Watch me, Blossom. A sex offender in the state of California, take for example, and I'm not saying that we need to pattern our registry and our sex offender treatment and protocols with that of the United States and Canada. But I am saying that these systems and protocols that have been working in these countries and these states and jurisdictions have worked. Okay? So if there is a sex offender in California, same California, and he or she wants to move from Northern California to Central California, the parole board has to now go and look at where he is moving. They have to give him permission, and they have to do what is called an intrastate movement certificate. So now he or she will be monitored by a different entity. All of that has to happen. Permission is rarely, and I say rarely given for a sex offender in Texas to be able to move to New York. That takes years, and if ever it happens. In Grenada, A sex offender could move, sleep in one house tonight and sleep in another house tomorrow. And there is nothing in the registry that says he can't. There are no laws in Grenada that say he or she can't. He can go to the block, or he can go to the school fair, he can go to the harvest, he can go to the beach. We need to give to our population way more when it comes to sexually based crimes in Grenada.
There are two people, one on the Facebook, one on YouTube, that make a valid point. When perpetrators serve their time in the U.S., they are deported back to Grenada. Do you know if the draft for the registry includes placing these perpetrators, deported perpetrators, on Grenada's offenders list registry?
Yes, I think I browsed through that. There are. So if you're coming from another jurisdiction, you will have to register as a sex offender, or the commissioner, or the police system, the legal system, the law system needs to know and will know that you're coming in as a deportee for a sex crime.
All right, let me get this caller. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Morning.
Blossom and Mr. Panchoo, something just run through my mind. It's only can a sexual offense be committed by any sexual person? In other words, can a female commit a sexual offense? Can a male commit a sexual offense? No. And I'm asking myself, it's not better to, instead of having registration, if you can make that part of the body which they commit sexual offense sort of a dormant, not active then. So you have two questions to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc.
You know, Blossom, I kind of missed the question. Is the caller on still?
Good morning. No, he has gone. The first one he asked about if a woman can be a perpetrator as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that one I got. I didn't get the second one.
I didn't get the second one clearly. He was breaking up just a little bit.
So if he calls again, then okay, we'll take it. But the first one, yes. And the answer, when it comes to the sexual perpetration of sexual crime, the perpetration of sexual crimes, yes, a woman can. Often we go the limited way in our perception, our definition, a working definition of what a sex crime is. Sex crime is not just sexual intercourse. It involves a lot of other things: coercion, lewdness, forced affection, as I said, pornography, sexting, sexual assault, and all of these can be perpetrated by a woman. The only thing that a woman is not naturally able to do is coitus, and I use the word loosely, really, in a way, is to penetrate, because she does not have the wherewithal to do that. But she can use objects, which falls into sexually deviant crimes, or it can be a rape also, or it can be sodomy. So it depends on the nature, what is used, where it is used, but women do commit sexual crimes also.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Blossom, and morning, Dr. Panchoo. Let me start saying that, unfortunately, we are pretentious people. We live in a world where we adore naked empires. We are selective in all that we do. But let me hasten to say also that laws doesn't change behavior. It might have to curtail it. The fact is that we are a corrupt society. We are a immoral society, and yet we are trying to impose morality. The first thing we have to do is to become honest, radically honest with ourselves and with each other, which we are not by and large. So if we could begin from that, I agree with Dr. Panchoo in the sense that the registrar will only be a list of names except if you put certain other measures in place. The other idea is that, Blossom, the other day, Akim, on your program last, I think you read something from your friend Akim, and to me, I really was in support of what he said, is that we're talking about punishing. Who is talking about prevention? And prevention is not just targeting the known perpetrator, but what about those among us who are and have not been caught? Let me just leave this idea with you. It is established that only 1% of people will steal. Only 1% will be extremely honest. The other 98% of us are opportunist thieves. Is that not the same? We can extend that to being sexual perpetrators likewise. And the only way we will remedy that is that if we face ourselves in the mirror and be extremely honest, because we know situation. If it's our relative that is involved, we think we will try to protect them. But if it's other people, we will do everything to even castrate them and kill them. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Doc?
Yeah, some really, really good points made by this last caller. And there is no question that some of the truism of what he expressed is real in Grenada. So maybe really and truly what I need to say is that here is another voice that's echoing the call. It's a loud call for our lawmakers to do more and more and more to protect our population. Yeah.
There's a question on Facebook. Somebody asked, we have to start with those in authority, because I know of an incident of a gentleman who breaks up one of my friend's life with his girlfriend because the gentleman offered her a job and started going out with her and break up that relationship. But the primary part of it that spurred the question in mind was the powers that be, the senior men in authority sometimes who are perpetrators themselves. And there's always this notion that once you can buy your way out of a situation, then the law does not apply to you.
Yeah. And you hear it a lot, Blossom. And there is no scientific research to quantify it. So I'll be very loose with my comments. But you hear it often enough to understand the plight of the vulnerable, especially here in Grenada, in our society. Women who are single mothers, who need books and who need just to survive. I'm not even talking about luxurious items, just like flour and sugar and a little saltfish will be used by people in authority and or people who offer to help them. And it doesn't really go down as a sexual crime, but really when you look at the ethical piece of it, Blossom, the conscionable piece of it, that is tantamount to a sexual crime. It's because that's what some people do. They use the opportunity to control you. In other words, I can give you $100 to buy groceries, but I must also be able to use you. I can give you a job, but I must be able to also use you. Okay? And we see that and we hear about it. I don't know how much we see, but we have heard enough about it that one of these days it is going to be a crime. Right now it's more ethics and moral stuff, because if you have two consenting adults, you haven't broken technically any law. However, people do it because they want, and so to coerce, quid pro quo, or just to coerce somebody to so that you can help, to help them to get something, is a crime. It's unconscionable.
As we wrap, Doc, your final thoughts, especially going forward, and somebody's inquiring what role you play in this, the consultations and the registry, and how you can play a greater part if you're not already involved.
No, I am not involved. I was not asked, not yet. Oh, well, I shouldn't say not yet. I haven't been asked to be part of the consultation process. But I would like to really see, I would like to see a lot of things go in there to give it more legal teeth, to give it substance, so that when it becomes, when it is, we have enough consultation. And let me say this here about this act. This act really does not need consultation in Blossom. It does not need consultation. No, we really don't need consultation. The people have consulted enough already. Ariel still rings in our mind, right? She does. So many of our children who suffer. You know, I could go on record, Robbie and Jeremiah, you know, I could go on record here, you know, on his last couple of days, you know, perpetrator was allowed to walk out of the prison as a champion, you know, after perpetrating and killing, not only perpetrating, but took the life of Robbie. You know, he walked out with a color guard. Out of prison. I cried on that day, Blossom, because what I am saying is that our laws in Grenada, we are not protecting our population. And I will be if I have to be the singular voice out there to say that much more needs to be done and much more could be done to protect our women and our children. The registry is an okay document. I am okay with the registry, but I'm saying before the registry, and I wrote an article last year, it's called Before the Registry. Before the registry, you must enact laws, fundamental, basic, structural laws to be put into place so that when the registry does come, it makes sense. It's like painting your house before you plaster. That's really, for me, that's what it is. The registry is a cosmetic. Registry really is a cosmetic gesture. It is the paint, it is the varnish, it is the last tile that you put before you walk and you move in your house. It's not foundational. What we need is to where does a sex offender go when he comes from prison? What programs do we have to rehabilitate him? How many times a week does he need to go to that program? Who is going to monitor him? Are we going to put a bracelet, on his foot? You know, that's what the monitor is for. How are we going to do that? And when these things are done, then we go and we flash the registry and say, here it is, people, here it is, children, here it is, Ariel, here it is, Robbie. And the country is now prepared to protect its citizens. Until then, I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry because we need laws, and we need more honest, hardworking people to help to enact them to protect our citizens.
Well said, Dr. Panchoo. Thank you so very much for being our guest this morning as we continue to follow this latest development in our attempts to curb sexually related crimes in Grenada and at least reduce its prevalence in society. Appreciate your input. As always, riveting conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Blossom, and good morning, and have a great week.
Thank you. You enjoy your week as well. Clinical psychologist Dr. Augustine Panchoo, we thank him so much for sharing his thoughts following consultations recently in the establishment of a sex offenders registry. Like he said, there needs to be more put into it. The registry alone is not enough. Thank you so very much, viewers and listeners, for tuning in to The Point. Always appreciate your listenership, your viewership, your time. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. I'll be back tomorrow morning, God willing. Joseph is up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. Bye-bye.